The following is a hockey podcast out of Vancouver and Surrey, British Columbia. It'll only consist of a lot of puck talk and even more BS, or in actual words, banter and satire. Enjoy, and as always, go Canucks go.
Man, oh man. Vancouver Canucks fans were told that JT Miller had to be dealt in order to get rid of the drama in the dressing room. Well, based on the early returns on that trade, the Canucks should have waited a little bit longer.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Locked On Canucks. My name is Trevor Beggs, co-host of Locked On Canucks and also a Canucks writer currently with Daily Hive Vancouver. Before we dive into the show, we got to thank you for tuning into Locked On Canucks because it is your Canucks every damn day, through the highs and certainly through the lows as well. But we appreciate the hell out of you for tuning into Locked On Canucks, and shout out to the Locked On Podcast Network as well, doing the most for sports fans across the world. The Vancouver Canucks, it's looking like they did not do the most for this team, for this fan base, for this franchise when they dealt away JT Miller on January 31st, 2025. And while it looked like early on there were some positive returns from the trade, Filipino looking like one of the most dangerous Canucks, Marcus Pettersson, solidifying the defense, it's becoming abundantly clear that the Canucks likely pulled the trigger on this trade too soon. So what could the Canucks have done differently? What would have happened if the Canucks were patient? And, it's a lot of negativity right now. We will get to one good thing about your Vancouver Canucks as we wrap up here on Locked On Canucks. But the JT Miller trade, okay, if we want to look at it in a nutshell, it's basically JT Miller. Obviously, we traded away Eric Brancham and Jackson Dorrington as well. But JT Miller for Filipino, a first-round pick in 2025, which could be an unprotected first-round pick in 2026. And Victor Mancini coming back in the trade as well. As we know, later that night, they flipped that first-round pick to the Pittsburgh Penguins for Marcus Pettersson. We also dealt away Melvin Fernstrom, Vincent Desharnais, Danton Heinen, getting Drew O'Connor and Marcus Pettersson in return. But here's the risk, and Kyle and I talked about it on Locked On Canucks back in January, or at least I was saying this. Trading JT Miller is likely going to be a mistake for this franchise. That being said, I was hoping that it could at least be somewhat of a wash. And look, some of this was out of the Canucks' hands, but what was in the Canucks' hands was the fact that they could have been more patient with this deal. And if you want to look at the two biggest returns of that trade, right? It's hard to call either one the centerpiece, but Filipino and the first-round pick in 2025, which again can be an unprotected first-round pick in 2026. The Vancouver Canucks likely pulled the trigger on this trade too soon. Now, Filipino, we'll touch on him first because that one's a little bit out of the Canucks' control, although they did know the injury history, right? 4 concussions. He's only 25 years old right now. I did say 27 the other day. Filipino, only 25 years old, 26 later this year. The concussion history had, limited him to 10 games just a season ago. And, of course, he comes to Vancouver, looks good off the hop, and suffers his 5th concussion, the age of 2025. All reports is that he will not be back this season. And it's fair to wonder if his career is done. I hope that's not the case. I've enjoyed watching Filipino in Vancouver. Everyone you talk to on the New York side of the equation loves what Filipino brought to the table. But the fact of the matter is, JT Miller, for whatever you want to say about the locker room drama, Vincent Desharnais calling this guy an asshole, Petey's, lack of form, apparently due to JT Miller, all of that being said, JT Miller was the MVP of this team last season. And there's a good argument for Quinn Hughes, of course, but he was voted as MVP by the fans last season. He was also voted as the team's most exciting player. He also became just the 7th player in franchise history to have a 100-point season. And oh yeah, he scored the last game-winning goal for the Canucks in the 2024 playoffs as well. This is a guy that the Canucks should have been patient in trading. And on top of that, they should have been a little bit more patient with dealing that first-round pick as well. Of course, it gets dealt for Marcus Pettersson, who, sure, he's made the defense better, but the defense of this team before, they lacked speed. They lacked the ability to move the puck up the ice. Again, due to this management team and who they brought in the offseason, with Derek Forbort and Vincent Desharnais, Susie and Myers taking a bit of a step back early on in the season. But it's like, okay, now you got this great defense, but you can't score. And that was the primary problem with trading away JT Miller. And for those who believe that JT Miller, had to go because of the locker room issues, and I do know there's a lot of people in this fan base who did not want to see JT Miller traded. He was a fan favorite for a reason. I want to bring Canuck fans back to the Pavel Bure trade. And the reason I bring that up is Pavel Bure, he first made his trade request to the Vancouver Canucks back in right before the 1997-1998 NHL season. He skipped training camp. He trained in Moscow. And again, we're talking about the fall of 1997. Brian Burke didn't trade him away until 1999. And that was because, and he said this publicly at the time, he did not want to trade Bure for pennies on the dollar. He held on to an upset player who wanted to get out of Vancouver for 15 to 16 months before he finally pulled the trigger on that trade. And when you look back at that trade, a lot of the return was underwhelming, but the Vancouver Canucks did pick up Ed Jovanovski, who ended up being one of the best defensemen in franchise history. A solid defenseman who was tough as nails, who could also score some goals as well. They got back an instrumental piece for that West Coast Express era. Now with fast forward to the JT Miller trade, and this appeared to all come to a head at training camp. Obviously, he takes his leave of absence in November, and he's gone by January. We're talking about the span of 4 months where JT Miller, the opinion about him from this franchise, from this fan base, completely changed. And it's easy to look back at this with a revisionist mindset, but we were saying it at the time. I said it already. The Canucks should not have traded JT Miller for pennies on the dollar. And it appears that's exactly what they did. And then you go and compound the problem by trading away the prime asset of the deal in my eyes, which was that first round pick for Marcus Pettersson, who is a fine player. But the Canucks traded him for this Fugazi playoff push that we know now didn't make a whole lot of sense. It didn't make a whole lot of sense at the time either. You were kind of banking on a hope and a prayer that guys like Elias Pettersson would figure it out. And Marcus Pettersson would be that stabilizing force back there. But Marcus Pettersson, might I remind you, was a guy that the Canucks could have gotten for free in free agency. Of course, they'd have to pay him the money, but they wouldn't have had to trade away a first-round pick this year. And on top of that, a pick that could be unprotected in 2026. And now, that doesn't matter all that much now. The New York Rangers have been below that bar. They've been a bottom 13 team up until getting an overtime win last night. And now they are the 14th worst team in the NHL. So if you're a petty Canucks fan like myself, you're saying go Rangers go. At least finish 19th overall, goddammit. But looking at this trade return early on, again, we're just a little over 2 months past the trade. The Canucks traded away a guy who was one of the best players in franchise history. And again, I bring in Pavel Bure because Pavel Bure and JT Miller, the only two Canucks in franchise history who averaged over a point per game in their Canuck careers. The Canucks, on paper right now, traded that guy away for a second-line center at his ceiling who may not even play again, and a second-pairing defenseman and some spare parts. That is simply not good enough, and that's the move that can set a franchise back for years to come. You're listening to Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every day. Why does this always happen to Canuck fans, man? The best fans in the goddamn world? How could this happen here in Vancouver? And on the other side, I want to talk about some good and some bad, okay? Why it's not necessarily all doom and gloom for the Vancouver Canucks. I did talk about that a little bit more in depth this week on Monday. Go check out that episode. Don't let this disastrous Canucks season fool you. But make no mistake, this trade is looking like a disaster for the Vancouver Canucks. So let's talk a little bit more about Patrik Allvin and Jim Rutherford and why it's not potentially all doom and gloom for your Vancouver Canucks. That's coming up on the other side after we shout out our friends over at Game Time. Man, oh man, you might not want to be using this Game Time code to buy Canucks tickets anymore, but the NBA is going on. Okay, there's other things. Concerts, baby, concerts. They're going on too. You can find it all on Game Time. Okay, and hey, maybe you want to go check out some playoff hockey in another city because there's nothing like watching playoff hockey live, baby. The energy of the crowd, the sound of the skates on the ice, maybe even seeing an OT winner. And to catch all of that, Game Time makes getting tickets even easier than ever. And that's because Game Time, they stepped at the F up, baby. They got this new feature called Game Time Picks, which filters out the fluff and shows you only incredible deals on the best seats. Again, no time wasted, man. I can go search for tickets while I'm on the toilet, baby. That's how easy it is with Game Time, okay? They got easy ticket shopping. They got super deals and get that peace of mind because on that app, you got seat views before you buy, no surprise fees. And again, they got that lowest price guarantee, baby. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Go download that Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is Game Time. You're listening to Locked On Canucks. Your Canucks every damn day. And yeah, no postcast last night. I mean, no Kyle Ballin, man. The guy's busy catching butterflies and making raps, man. Taking care of his mental health. Maybe I should go catch some butterflies. Unbelievable stuff. But again, the Canucks today catching some shade from me for that JT Miller trade, which it appears that they are badly losing right now. And again, I'm a petty Canucks fan. I'm happy. I'm cheering for the New York Rangers, man. I don't want that pick to be an unprotected first-round pick in 2026 because that's where the real value in the deal would have come in for the Vancouver Canucks. And again, JT Miller now with another team. Yeah, so long, good riddance. But man, oh man, you look at the Canucks since he left, and JT Miller has 10 goals and 26 points in 25 games for those New York Rangers. You look at what the Canucks have done since then, and their leading scorer is, of course, none other than Pius Suter, who's got 9 goals and 19 points over that time span. No other Canuck has more than 14 points since JT Miller was traded away. And again, it's too late now for the Canucks to be patient, but moving forward, have Patrik Allvin and Jim Rutherford learned anything from this experience? And the end of season media availability of these guys is going to be fascinating. Because what if the Canucks were just a little bit more patient this year and a little bit more future looking? And I might talk a bit about this on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Canucks. But you look at what they could have had. Again, the Canucks, they trade that first for Marcus Pettersson. If they held on to that first, and if they sold on guys like Brock Besser at the deadline and Pius Suter at the deadline, let's say Brock Besser got them a conditional first or a second round pick. Pius Suter probably should have gotten a second round pick. Even Carson Soucy. You look at Luke Schenn getting traded for a second and a fourth. I think if the Canucks wait an extra day, they get that same deal for Carson Soucy. Again, they got the San Jose Sharks third round pick, which is basically a second round pick if you want to call it that. But between Pettersson, Brock Besser, Pius Suter, and Carson Soucy, the Canucks conceivably could have walked into this offseason with 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks for those players. Those are the type of assets that you can use to turn a team around quickly. And instead, here we are, hoping and praying for an Elias Pettersson bounce back here. Now, look, if you want to maybe look at more the bright side of the Vancouver Canucks right now, and this isn't necessarily a bright side, but the Vancouver Canucks firmly stuck in the mushy middle right now. But teams can succeed when they're stuck in the mushy middle, okay? They can succeed. You look at teams like the Dallas Stars, for instance. If you know how to draft and you know how to scout, you can unearth talent that's maybe a little bit flying under the radar, right? And the Dallas Stars did that with guys like Jason Robertson and Jake Ottinger. I mean, look at the St. Louis Blues right now. They're getting contributions from guys like Zach Bolduc, who was a mid to late first round pick, right? Robert Thomas wasn't an incredibly high draft pick either. So teams can find success when they're not drafting in the top of the draft, right? I mean, the Buffalo Sabres are a prime example. The Edmonton Oilers might be in the same conversation with the Sabres if they didn't get, Connor McDavid in the draft as well. So again, not all doom and gloom for the Vancouver Canucks, but this management group, they should have been more patient. And I just hope it doesn't cost the Canucks more so than the next year or two. Let's get to a couple comments here before we get to the other side here on Locked On Canucks. Sad World 2025 say losing Kyle was the worst thing that happened to the Canucks. Man, oh man. Kyle Bowen, more available, more beloved than JT Miller. Look at that, man. I like the love for Kyle Bowen. Greener in the comments saying, JT who? And wants to also show that Victor Mancini was an underrated pickup. Look, I've liked Victor Mancini so far in his minutes here with the Vancouver Canucks. And I think obviously the only reason he's not in the lineup is because Derek Forward's played pretty well. He's been a staple on the penalty kill. And DPD, who, for my money, was the best Canuck on the ice last night. Now, he's just looking like a stud out there. And if you want to revisit this whole JT Mo Marcus Pettersson thing through the lens of DPD, I think that was something that the organization maybe didn't see coming, was just how good DPD would be at the NHL level and how quickly he would be good at the NHL level. Because now you're looking at the left side for years to come, and it looks like DPD can be a second pairing left shot defenseman. I certainly have that confidence. And if that's the case, did you really need to go out and trade a first round pick for Marcus Pettersson? Again, when you could have had him for free in the offseason. I get that the Canucks didn't want to punt on this season, but that being said, this team was obviously not winning the Stanley Cup this year. You will really look at the rose-colored glasses if you thought that was the case. And let's talk about Aquilini's fingerprints on this too, man, because I was reading the book, Never Boring by Ed Willis. Go check it out. It's a fantastic book. And there's a tidbit in there about the Canucks from the 2008 trade deadline where the Canucks were chasing Brad Richards at the deadline. And the supposed deal at the time was Schneider, Kessler, and a first for Brad Richards. Brad Richards ended up getting far less than that when he got traded to the Dallas Stars. But that's what was on the table at the time. And then Dallas asked for Alex Edler as well. Can you imagine the pain in this market if Kessler, Schneider, a first, and Edler got traded for Brad Richards? Man, oh man. But the reason I bring that up is because in Ed Willis's book, he talks about how Francesco Aquilini was maybe a little bit more involved than he should have been at the 2008 trade deadline. As much as being, in the trade deadline war room at points. And of course, the Canucks did not deal Brad Richards. They missed the playoffs that season, and Francesco Aquilini fires known as saying that missing the playoffs is unacceptable. I would like to know right now what Francesco Aquilini is thinking about this Vancouver Canucks season. Dear God, is this guy calling up Paul Bissonnette? The guy who told him not to trade JT Miller? Maybe Paul Bissonnette is the secret GM of the Vancouver Canucks. But man, oh man. Francesco Aquilini, his fingerprints, it seems like it's all over this season as well. The fact that they didn't sell Brock Besser, Pius Suter, the fact that they flipped that first quickly for Marcus Pettersson. And hey, who knows? if Aquaman is the shadow GM or if there's this Patrik Allvin and Jim Rutherford being impatient. But you like to think a guy like Rutherford, who's been around for a long, long time, does know better, as trade happy as he tends to be for your Vancouver Canucks. Let's get to some of your comments on the other side. It's heating up here in the comments on Locked On Canucks. And I do want to talk about the one good thing for your Vancouver Canucks as well. And no, it wasn't the fact that they can still be good while being in the mushy middle. Let's talk about something even better than that, at least in the short term here. You listen to Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every damn day. We'll be back on the other side after shouting at our friends over at FanDuel. If you're betting on sports, the place you got to go is FanDuel, baby, okay? Because right now with the Canucks out of the dance, sometimes to get the games, the NHL, a little extra juice, you got to place a few bucks on it, okay? And FanDuel's giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can bet $2 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to who's going to score the first goal of the game and even who's going to win the Stanley Cup. Is it the Maple Leafs here? What? No way, man. No, I've got my eye on a few underdogs heading into the playoffs. And man, oh man, I'm still loving our boys over at Locked On Senators. Give me the Senators over the Leafs in round one, man, because I'm hoping that series is going to happen. And you know me, I got my Leafs bias out, baby. F the Leafs. Go Sens go. Whatever you're betting on, make sure you go check it out on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get in on the action all year long. We're back here on Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every damn day. And I keep saying we, man, because I feel like my brother Kyle Bowen is still close by, but here he is abandoning the Vancouver Canucks to go catch butterflies, man. But speaking of which, let's see if I got an update here from Kyle Bowen here on Locked On Canucks. Man, oh man. Kyle Bowen, he did drop another rap here for the people of Locked On Canucks. He says, "Dear people of Locked On Canucks, hey Trevor, I thought I'd say never, but man, that was whack, losing to the crack. But luckily, I still have my sack, and I still have my heart, and have never heard my girlfriend fart. So my life is good after all. And after this Canucks free fall, sending love to my sisters and brothers. Tonight, I'll be hugging my mothers." Kyle, that was way better than yesterday, man. Bravo, buddy. Man, Kyle is just a rejuvenated man after leaving Locked On Canucks for 4 days now, man. Unbelievable stuff. What else you doing, man? Staring out the window. And what else we got here? Kyle Bowen ready to punch something. Okay, whoa, buddy. I think you're catching butterflies, man. What happened to being calm, cool, and collected, man? Unbelievable stuff from Kyle Bowen. But let's talk about some good in the Vancouver Canucks. And man, oh man. Here's the good, man, the Abbotsford Canucks. We talked about them earlier this week, the transformation under Manny Malhotra, and it continues down there in Abbotsford despite having, a third of their team right up with the Vancouver Canucks right now. And the Abbotsford Canucks, they won their 11th straight game last night, defeating the San Diego Gulls 6-3, man. Unbelievable. Look at that. And it didn't start off great for the Abbotsford Canucks in this one. But again, 6 goals overall. Here was the lineup, right? Phil DiGiuseppe, Max Sasson, and Archie Baines on the top line right now. Sammy Blais, who's been a revelation down there for the Abbotsford Canucks. Again, he wants to get back up to the NHL. You heard Brandon Assel talk about it on Locked On Canucks as well. But man, oh man, again, you got to be feeling good about the Abbotsford Canucks right now. They were trailing in this game 2-1 at one point, but goals from Ty Mueller helped them out. Former Canuck Justin Bailey did score against them. Kirill Kudryavtsev scored. Akito Hirose got a goal. Max Sasson got a goal, and Archie Baines also got a goal. So this team finding ways to win, despite the fact that, again, what would you say, 3 of their top players in DPD, Atu Ratu, and Jonathan Legermacki up with the club right now. Actually, Linus Karlsson as well. Brandon Assel called him their MVP this season. He is also up with the club right now. So that this team missing, let's call it their top 4 players, and they're still able to rattle off 11 wins in a row. So I'm feeling good about that. And Canucks fans in the comments, some of you aren't feeling so good. What? Man, oh man, let's get to some haters here on Locked On Canucks, man. Let's see. Chew It in the comments saying JT Miller was a joke and that he's unsubbed because of me lambasting the Canucks for the JT Miller trade. Look, man, I'm just calling it like it is, man. And sometimes, this is lesson in life that my grandmama taught me. You can't make everyone happy. And the Vancouver Canucks haven't made me happy in 25 plus years of watching this team. So it just is what it is, man. I mean, JT Miller, look, he was, whether you like him or not, I think a lot of Canucks fans actually were pretty big JT Miller fans. He was one of the best players in franchise history. Again, only Pavel Bure had a higher points per game rate than JT Miller with his time with the Vancouver Canucks. Rafi Khan in the comments saying, I appreciate you guys being real about the JT Miller trade. Thanks, man. Again, no Kyle Bowen here, but he's still getting the love. Still getting the love because it's not just me. It's we, okay? Unbelievable right now. Let's get to another Fijian brother here at Locked On Canucks. Man, I love it. Vishy is fishy, saying the JT Miller trade looks bad right now, but the contract is still scary for the Rangers towards the end. And it also doesn't change that he was toxic here, even though he was decent. And looking at, that's one of the main things I did want to touch on today, the fact that the Canucks said he had to go because he was a toxic guy in that dressing room. He might have been toxic towards Elias Pettersson. I'm not saying that they had some good relationship and that was all a farce, but JT Miller went out to dinner with a bunch of guys when the Canucks went to New York to play the Rangers. We learned that Philip Hronek and JT Miller are apparently best buds. I didn't see that one coming. Quinn Hughes talked about, looking forward to meeting up with JT Miller after the trade and at the Four Nations before we learned he wasn't going. So JT Miller had friends on this tree, but my point is there are toxic guys in locker rooms sometimes. Again, Pavel Bure was here for almost a year and a half after his trade request, playing for an incredibly dysfunctional Vancouver Canucks team. And what did Brian Burke do? He waited 15 months to trade him because that's what smart management does. They don't rush guys out the door. They wait to trade them for the right package. And of course, there is the risk that, JT Miller could have declined further and further, but man, oh man, I think the guy does play balls to the wall each and every night. And you're seeing it now with the New York Rangers. He's putting up a lot of points over there. You're listening to Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every damn day. Let's get out of here on the show. Lots of crazy comments, man. Filipino Sven Berchi 2.0. I didn't even want to put that out there, man. That's one left to Filipino. Get well soon. Unbelievable stuff. Again, if you like what we're doing on Locked On Canucks, go subscribe, like this video on YouTube. On the podcast side, go follow us and leave a 5-star review. Whether you love us or whether you hate us, it's Go Canucks Go, baby. And we'll be back soon on another episode of Locked On Canucks.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.